Hi, friends. Welcome back to the Lash Extension podcast. I'm Erin.
And I'm Tress, and this is the stress episode.
The stress episode.
It is the stress episode. I feel like we all deal with so much stress on such a regular basis. And I have been such a stressed individual throughout the majority of my childhood and my adult life. And I've learned so many things to deal with that stress in a really productive, proactive way. And I think it's something that everybody would be able to learn from. And I know that, we just, stress is never something that we're going to avoid in life. So whether it has to do with our job as lash artists or as entrepreneurs, or as employees, stress is something that we're always going to encounter. And I know that you and I have both developed and learned tools to be able to deal with that stress in a different way. And we wanted to be able to help you all learn from the things that we've learned from, because I think it's safe to say, sometimes you can get addicted to stress, right? Like, I
Oh,
used to
yeah.
wear it as a badge of honor. And I know I've said that as probably in relation to a couple of things over the episodes that we've done. But when people would message me online, my name often automatically corrects to stress. And so people would
Oh,
be like,
funny.
"Hi, stress. How's it going? These are the questions that I have for you," and whatever. And then, I'd get back to them, and then they'd go back and they'd read the message and they'd be like, "Oh my God, I'm so sorry." And I would go, "No, you know what? It's synonymous. It means the same thing. Like, that is my name. Don't you worry about it." And
Mm.
I wore it in such a way that when I finally let go of that and started going, oh wait, I don't have to live with this level of stress constantly. My life started to really open up and it started to really change. And I was just talking to you about how even the way that I spoke changed. And I think that there's just a lot that we can help you guys with, and help you see that you're not alone, and that there's other people out there in this world that are dealing with the same things that you're dealing with, and then hopefully we'll give you some tools to be able to take home and work on it yourself.
Yeah, I think with stress and anxiety, I think that there's this kind of underlying expectation that once I reach this certain goal or once I reach this certain level, once I make this certain amount of money, once I make this, amount of followers, whatever, you can complete that sentence with. I think a lot of people then assume that, the anxiety is going to lessen, the stress is going to lessen. I can then chill out. I can then take a step back. Like everything's going to get better once I get to this point. And that is just absolutely not true. Every person that I know, regardless of their in quotes success levels, are dealing with stress, they're dealing with anxiety. It just looks different and it can change shape. So the mold ends up shifting, but it still is going to be a lifelong thing that you're dealing with, regardless of, once you do reach that certain goal. It might be different stress. You might have
Yeah.
less monetary stress, but you might carry a different kind of stress at that point.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's just it can shapeshift. Stress levels can shapeshift. Stressors can shapeshift. And I think that it's really important in life to understand that there is no avoiding stress. There is no avoiding anxiety. There's things that we can do to pull us back to the present and to, cope and combat stress and anxieties. But it is a part of life. It's a part of being human, and us as entrepreneurs and choosing this route of career to be, in the career that we have chosen and working for ourselves, or even if you are an employee, sometimes, that stress can be amplified in some ways because the pressure can sometimes feel heavier than for other people. But again, it just looks different for different people. It isn't gone for one person or less for the next person.
Right. So let's talk about how it shapeshifts for a moment, just because I think it'll be good to give some examples. You and I are at totally
Sure.
different places in our career. And so I love that we both have different perspectives on it. For a lot of my career, I have been an employee and or
Mhm.
helping to grow businesses that I don't own. I have also grown my own businesses, but you've really committed to that in a different way than I ever did. But for example, when I was in my early 20s, My stress was about making enough money to put food on the table for my toddler as a single mom, right? Like
Right.
that was a boatload of stress. I earned $10 an hour. I lived on my own and I shopped out of my parents' kitchen. And I was like really blessed to be able to do that. That was the kind of stress that I was carrying then. Like, am I going to be a good mom? Am I going to be like, do I have food for tomorrow? Right. Um, do I have enough money to buy a bottle of wine? Like literally like I'm that's not glamorous, but like that's where my life was at in my very early 20s. And then that morphed into finding a partner and becoming a stay-at-home mom. And that was unbelievable because I like felt like everything had been relieved for me. I was able to focus on my career if I wanted to. Like I was growing my part time makeup business. I was a stay at home mom for my son. And the stress didn't stop, it changed. And it turned out that like I wasn't meant to be a stay at home mom. Like I
Mm.
am a very career driven and focused individual. So if you think like living the dream would be being able to stay at home with your kids, that takes a really special kind of person to do that and like not lose it, right? Like I very much admire stay-at-home moms. And then like every time I went through another phase, the stress changed. Like then I was growing my own business and I was trying to get clients and worried about whether or not I did a good enough job for them or if I was worthy of the kind of attention I was getting. That moved into, you know, another kind of stress. And it was really something that I feel like my body was physically addicted to stress, but I was diagnosed with stress stomach aches in elementary school and stress headaches in middle school. So like it's really something that I carried with me the majority of my life, except for the last couple of years. And so like
Yeah.
I want you to know if you've been through different periods of life where you're like, hey, if I get to this point, I won't carry this amount of stress with me anymore. It changes unless you are intentional about learning how to manage it. I think that's my biggest thing here is it's you're not going to snap your fingers or wake up one magical morning in the circumstances that you were hoping for and not have stress if you don't address it head on and intentionally. Because I
Mhm.
woke up in like fairy tale land as a stay-at-home mom who could sleep in, who had a husband that loved to cook and would provide for my family, and I was still constantly stressed. I didn't know how
Mhm.
to deal with it.
Yeah, I think that that brings up a really good point of like these are pretty, big stressors, if you will. Like they're kind of keynote stressors, if you will. But there is micro stressors too.
All day long.
And those are really interesting in the way that I think that, I mean, I don't know if clinically they would describe it in the way that I'm about to, but I think that for me, a micro stressor is, we have some odd like 10,000 or some crazy number of thoughts that just pass through our heads all day, every day. And sometimes those thoughts can just create a really quick rush of a stress response or a fight or flight response in our body. And it's just a fleeting thought that passes through. It means nothing. It has nothing to do with anything that we're, looking at or in the present moment with. But those micro stressors also take a really big toll, on our overall day to day, the way we outlook. The way we outlook our outlook on the way we look at life, day to day. And I really like what you said about like the stay at home mom thing, because I think that that's really important to understand that a lot of people, me and you have talked about this too, a lot of people see somebody else totally in their element and like following their life path that calls to them and is perfect for them and is where they're meant to be. And because they're doing it so well, we almost want to follow that. And it looks so good for somebody else. And so we're like, holy shit, they're crushing it. Like I love how well they're doing that. It makes me feel inspired to kind of follow that path too. And then it is absolutely not our life path. And that's okay to understand too and realize. But that could be a really easy trap that people fall into. And then they feel very out of alignment and out of balance, which can create the most stress. To me, when I feel the most out of balance and the most like not where I'm meant to be in that moment, that's when I feel the most anxiety and the most stress, because I feel like I'm just like off the rails and I just can't get my footing under me, you know?
Totally. That's really interesting. I think that like comes down to comparison, right? Like comparison is they say comparison is the thief of joy, right? And when I really started going on this journey years ago, probably like 7 years ago, to go, oh, this is a serious problem in my life and I have to manage it, a couple of things happened. I saw like a naturopath doctor, and
Mm,
he told me that my stress levels, like my cortisol levels, were so high that like I was going to burn myself out. I couldn't lose weight. Like my body wasn't healthy. I was full of inflammation. And
mhm,
he was like not bringing this to like a weight thing, but just as an example, we were talking about weight loss because I couldn't lose weight. I was full of inflammation. And he was like, you could run for 10 hours when somebody else runs for an hour, and they would still like get more benefit out of that hour than you would out of 10 hours of running, like from like a weight loss perspective. Like that's how stressed I was. So I was in that space. And then I was building my lash business, and my friend, like I lived out of this paper planner because I hated digital planners. And my friend took it and wrote in really big letters, like I think it was like a pink highlighter, that comparison is the thief of joy. Because, and I looked at it every single day. It was my friend Amber. She owns a spa in Minnesota, and I rented from her for my lash business. And she was like, trust, like you can't, like I was comparing myself to all of these lash artists and all of these trainers and all of these people who were doing such incredible things, and the amount of stress that it was causing me, the amount of obsession that I had over it, and how it was just like trapping me in these cyclical thoughts. I didn't even realize what it was doing to me until I had a doctor and my best friend go, whoa, it's like it's time to get off that train, you know?
yeah, it's interesting because, my partner, bless him, he's the most wonderful human being in this world, he always says it's a choice. You know, like, you're choosing to fixate on that topic, like anxiety and stress, like, it's a choice,
I
and
have so many feelings about this.
every time that he says that to me, there's a part of me, especially in the moment, that it like, it stings because, like,
So
when you're
angry.
yeah, when
I
you're in
get
the
so angry.
yes, well, like, when you're in the thick of it, that is not what you need to hear, right? But at the same time, there's also a part of me that wants to, like, put my dukes up, but at the same time, I'm like, "Holy shit, you are so right, though." Like, I am actively choosing this. Like, I could choose the thought and fixate on the thought that is a cleaner thought, that is a kinder thought, that is, I could actively be doing things to fill my plate a little bit better, and like putting more effort into I don't know, instead of sitting there and dwelling on it, like just sitting in my bed and choosing to veg out or whatever and just like mentally check out, I could go to the gym and I could get my exercise in and get my stress out a different way. Like, there is choices inside of stress.
Yes and no.
And no, I would say that we don't choose stress, especially going back to those micro stressors. Like, when it's just a fleeting thought in your head and you all of a sudden have a cortisol response in your body and in your brain, there is a chemical reaction that your body is like, holy shit, like we're going to be stressed for a second. And it's almost an adrenaline. Like you said, I really like that you said that it's an addiction, because it totally is. And when have you ever heard the term, like, when people just search for chaos? Like, that's been me my
Like they
entire
thrive on
life. They
chaos.
thrive on chaos. That's been me my entire life. Like, the more pressure that I've had on me, the better I perform. And so for me, I tied that to my success levels. So
Yes.
the higher pressure that I could put on myself, the more that I could work, the less sleep that I could get, the more XYZ that it was, the more chaotic my life was, and the larger that my schedule was, and the more back to back and packed in my days were, the more chaotic my life was. Again, I wore that like a badge of honor. But B, like, I like that you said that. I'm reiterating that. I relate to that heavily. But B, the more stress that I had, I felt more successful. And that is
Yes.
so backwards. That
I
is so
had this
not okay.
picture in my head of this like woman who was on the phone all the time and needed all the time and like driving all of these places
Mhm.
and going to the office and going to meetings and being stressed out. Like in my head, I had this like version of somebody who is successful, and the stress just came along with that. It was just like along for the ride. So yeah, the more I developed those stress levels and the more people needed me and the more I was pulled in so many directions, yeah, it was like how I was gauging whether or not I was successful.
Yeah, and productive. I
Mhm.
felt like if I wasn't stressed out, I wasn't being productive because then I was sitting down like I was getting comfortable being like sitting in my seat, you know? Like I could be moving faster, I could be doing more, I could be getting more done, I could be more productive in some way shape or form. So, stress to me has always been kind of a gauge of productivity and success levels. And go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, so if you're listening to this right now, I want you to just like close your eyes if you're not driving and take a minute and just go, where do I subconsciously place stress on my priority level or on my like importance level in my life? Like I want you to like consciously think about, do you subconsciously place a high level of value on stress? Because if you do, it's a really good step in the right direction to go, oh, I need to change direction.
Mhm. And I don't think that it would be in the way of like, "Oh, I like stress."
No, nope.
That's not nobody likes stress. Like, I've never heard somebody actively ever say, like, "I enjoy the feeling of stress,"
I
right?
agree.
That's not accurate. What we're saying though, like what Tress is saying, I mean, I'm assuming I'm putting words in your mouth here, but like, I think it would be, where do you feel the most productive when you feel stressful? Like, in what form, when you're feeling stressed, do you feel the best? And
Yeah.
that's where, I, for example, my friends have always, they've said it in a very admiring way, but now as I try to like move through getting comfortable with seeking chaos in my life and like, grow out of that, like that's not a good place to be, it's not healthy, and healing from that, my friends have always admired me going 100 miles an hour at all times. Like I literally physically walk fast to everywhere that I'm going because I already know where I want to get to, and so I'm just going to get there. Like there's no time to be wasted, I'm just going to walk fast. My partner is 6'6". For anybody that doesn't know that, he's a professional basketball player and he is 6'6",
And you are not tall.
and I am 5'3". Okay. I walk faster than this man. Okay. One stride for him is two strides for me, quite
I
literally.
wish you could see my eyeballs right now.
And I walk faster than him. And it's kind of always been like a running joke in our relationship and with our friends. But like, that's kind of the undertone of my entire life has been like, when I have a goal, I want to get there as fast as I can. But with that, there's so much stress that comes along with it because there's so much pressure, right? So small examples like that, like where in your life are you noticing that you're going way too fast, or you are feeling the most stressed out because you are trying to get to an end goal, or because you XYZ at the finish that sentence. Where is stress highly prioritized in your mind in
Mhm.
a form that it's kind of being hidden?
Yeah. Okay, so then let's talk about this. Let's talk about speed. I wish I could give credit. I was scrolling this morning and I don't know the man that I was listening to. It was like a clip of a podcast. So I'm not trying to steal his podcast. I'm just trying to reiterate his thought. But he was basically like, he was talking about speed in our lives and how it correlates to fear and stress, and how going slow in our lives correlates to like care and compassion and living a stress-free life. And I have a couple examples of this, but he was like, all right, your DNA is going to tap out somewhere between 80 years and 120 years. Like it's just, that's all we got. He was like, you're not going anywhere. Like you're in this world, you're in this life. You don't have to do everything fast. Like there's nowhere to get
Mm-hmm.
to, essentially. And then he was talking about the faster you go, the faster you physically go, the faster your thoughts go. That's where fear and stress slide in. And the more fear and stress you have, the more focused you are on yourself. And the more focused you are on yourself, the less compassion and love you have for other people, and the less like enjoyment that you're going to get out of life through those connections. And he was like, so if you just like flip and take it back a few notches or many notches, and you slow down and you breathe and you take time to live your life, the more time you have and the slower you go, the more love and compassion you can have for other people, the more fulfillment and joy you're going to find in your life, and the less stress you're going to have. And it really correlates with how fast you're physically going and where your thoughts are. So, like, I've tried to slow down the way that I speak, I slow down the way that I think. And when I'm feeling anxious or stressed, it's not the way that it used to be because I have tools now. Oh, I need to come back to choice. Will you remind me of that? I need to
Sure.
come back to choice.
Okay.
I have tools to deal with stress now. But for example, I was running late. I was feeling stressed. This was like several months ago. And I like jumped in the shower and I was scrubbing my hair really fast. Like scrub, 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 fast, fast, fast. And I noticed that the faster my hands went, the faster my stress thoughts went.
Yeah.
And I took a deep breath and I was like, wait, I have to slow down. And I would move my fingers across my scalp slowly, like turtle pace. And my brain couldn't go faster than that. Like my brain had to slow its thoughts down to the speed of my physical movement.
Yeah.
And it was like such a beautiful, very clear realization because I spent so much of my life trying to go so fast. Like my husband at the grocery store on a random Sunday would be like, Are you in a hurry?" Cuz I'm like speed walking around the grocery store, and he was like, "We can just walk."
Yeah.
Right? Everything I did was fast. So the slower I was able to go, the less stress thoughts I could have like per minute basically,
Mhm.
right? But I want to come back to choice for a minute unless you have anything to add to that.
Oh, go ahead. Yeah.
Okay. I said it is and isn't a choice when you were like, your partner always says it's a choice, right? Mine tells me the same thing, and he has for 15 years and it didn't work for a very long time. Because I feel like it is a choice when we have tools and when we know the things that like mentally, like the mental tools that we can have to derail or morph or change where that stress is taking us, then it is a choice, I think. But I think until we have like those tools to help us stop that stress train, I don't think it's a choice for a lot of people.
And I want to add to that too. When I also don't think it's a choice when you are actively in a fight or flight response in your brain. You have to be able to take yourself out of that place in your mind in order for it to be a choice, because otherwise it's a visceral response to where your actual like biology is feeling threatened, and then the tiniest smallest things can be catalyst to, you know, causing an anxiety attack, for example. For me, I I have always I have ADHD and, you know, medicated and diagnosed. I know that you are too, Tress. And I didn't know that until a year ago, 2 years ago now. Gosh, I can't even remember the dates. Um, but I've always, because of that, like I am addicted to uppers, and like I was an addict for a long time, and I like going fast. I'm like, how fast can I get going? Right. And so where you're talking about slowing down and like actively slowing down, I've noticed that pattern for myself too, that like washing your hair and just doing the slower motions and even speaking slower, um, physically going slower requires my brain to go slower as well. And I really, really like that. But when you're in a fight or flight response in your mind and in your body, there is it's very challenging. I mean, I have struggled with anxiety my entire life. I was on SSRIs by the time that I was a teenager. I was 17, struggling with depression. I probably should have been on them probably in 6th or 7th grade. Um, that's another story for another day. So I've struggled with anxiety and depression, like medicated, like actually clinically diagnosed, since I was a child. And those anxious thoughts and anxiety attacks, for me, they come up in moments that I don't that I can't identify, I hate this word, but I'm going to say it. I can't identify a trigger. I can't identify what caused that to actually happen. It just is coming up. And so for me, the pattern, and working with therapists and stuff, I've realized that it's more so because my body is constantly in a state of fight or flight where I'm constantly going fast. And so I'm so used to it that it almost feels foreign to slow down. It feels scarier to me to be calm and sit silently and be in stillness, because it's so foreign, because I'm so used to going faster and faster and faster and faster and trying to chase that high, that sitting in stillness almost brings those anxious thoughts. And then when you are trying to come out of that chaotic chasing, in that fight or flight, for me, what I've realized is that it's more comfortable when I start to, when I, let me go back. When I'm sitting in stillness and those anxious thoughts, like, you really got to sit with your brain. You got to hear your own brain, and that can be really scary. And so for me, I found myself wanting to get out of that. As soon as it feels uncomfortable sitting in stillness and hearing those anxious thoughts and kind of having internal dialogue with yourself and those scary thoughts, I've always caught myself chasing the chaos and kind of chasing the stress again, because A, it's more familiar, but B, it keeps me out of having to actually deal with what's going on inside. So I think that those fight or flights and those stressors are almost a distraction for our brain for not having to deal with whatever our dialogue is inside. And for me, it's been very unkind for the majority of my life. My internal dialogue has been extremely unkind and not a pleasant place to be in my own head.
Mm-hmm.
So it's easier to have like an environmental stressor that like requires your attention than it is to sit in silence and be okay with actually having conversation with yourself. And so for me, I noticed that pattern a few years ago, and I was like, holy shit. So now every time that I'm sitting in a place where I'm wanting to chase chaos, and I'm kind of like, I'm either like picking fights with my partner, or I'm like, I don't even know what, just like for whatever reason, I'm like seeking chaos, or I'm going 100 miles an hour, like what you said, like for no reason in the grocery store, I'm like just going, just I'm just trying to get it done, right? I sit with myself and I'm like, what am I running from right now in my brain? What am I avoiding in my brain right now? Because there's something that I am actively trying to avoid and distract myself from, that's uncomfortable for me to sit in silence with my own self. And it almost is a moment and an opportunity to sit with yourself and to identify, this is an opportunity to grow. This is an opportunity to work through whatever's bubbling up right now, because it's clearly trying to present itself right now for a reason. And so I've started to kind of take that avenue as a coping whenever I am chasing that chaos and I am chasing that pressure, I am chasing that stress, and I'm trying to go as fast as I can, especially career wise. I think I don't remember if we've had a conversation about it on this podcast, but we certainly have on lives on Instagram and made posts about it. But toxic productivity is extremely prevalent when you're seeking chaos or when you are feeling really stressed. Toxic productivity kind of falls in the same vein there. And so when I am seeking toxic productivity, for me, and owning a business and being a couple businesses and being an entrepreneur like this, adding to my plate almost buries the stress, almost buries what's going on in my head. So the stress is a distraction. Does that make sense?
It totally does. I think that there's a couple things to like pull out of that. A, I completely understand what you're saying. And I think a lot of people can probably identify the fact that it doesn't feel good to sit with our own thoughts,
Yeah.
especially in a time in history when we can always be distracted. We just have like little computers with us everywhere, and we can always just bury our face in Instagram or Facebook and like
Mm.
not ever think, right? So if you're not quite ready to sit with your thoughts the way that you were like, oh, like this is an introspective moment.
Yeah.
If you're not really ready for an introspective moment, I know I've talked about it on the podcast before, but I'll talk about it again. Um, Active meditation is the thing that worked for me.
Yeah.
Like if I'm trying to just sit and quiet my thoughts and do nothing, my brain is on fire.
Hmm.
I will have thoughts and ideas like ping ponging back and forth all over the place. And maybe it's just stress, maybe it's just random stuff popping into my head. So active meditation has like really changed it for me, and it's like doing something very slowly and intentionally and experiencing your senses with it. So like if you're focusing on, making your coffee in the morning, and you're focusing on sight and sound and touch as you make your coffee, you're focusing on all of your senses. It doesn't leave much brain space for you to be able to like think about other things that are going on right now. So I drop into that like active meditation state since I've practiced it so much now, where if my thoughts start spinning, if they start like barreling down the track, right? Trying to stick with similar metaphors that I've had through, because like I want to say all these other things. But if they start running away without me, I will literally like I'll take my socks off and I'll walk really slowly across my living room and my kitchen, and I'll feel like the tile underneath my feet and like the cracks, like where it's like where the grout is, right? And then I'll like transition onto carpet, and I will walk slowly, and I'll feel the ground underneath my feet change as I go. So my slow movements are helping my brain slow down. If I'm walking slowly, I'm not breathing quickly. I'm not like right, like the anxiety breathing. If I'm physically moving slowly and I'm focusing on my physical senses, my brain can calm back down without me having to like sit quietly with just myself and my thoughts. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
Like
it
that's
totally
something that's
does.
helped me so much.
Yeah, yeah, it totally does. Can I add to that
Mhm.
in a different way? Um, One of the reasons that I learned that active meditation actually works, and this, I mean, it's science, but it's a little controversial. Um, the term multitasking is actually, it doesn't exist. You physically cannot multitask. Your brain
No,
can
it's
only,
bullshit.
it literally is scientifically not possible. Your brain, and this really helped me. Like, I'm saying this not in a way to like, I'm not I'm saying this in a way that this was actually a tool that significantly helped me realizing that active meditation was a really awesome coping tool to bring you back to the present. If you feel yourself, kind of getting all the way out there with your anxiety and your stressors. Um, but I learned this, that your brain can physically only have one thought at a time. And if you really think about that, you can have thoughts firing at the quickest pace. Every other second you could have another thought firing in your brain, but only one thought is passing through your mind at one time. And so when I learned that, I was like, oh, okay, that's why active meditation actually works, because what it's doing is it's actually requiring you at any given second to control what your brain is focusing on, because you can only focus on one thing at a time. And I learned that, and when we're talking about slowing down your thoughts, one of the things with active meditation that I was taught to do is with your senses. For you, I mean, we've talked about this for a few years, that was a tool that you learned about probably a year or two ago, and that's really helped you. For me, your sense of choice is touch and is feel. For me, it's sound. So,
Mhm.
and sound and smell. So, for me, it really helps to bring me back to the present when I stop and I pick five things. This was a cool tool. When I pick five things that I can hear at that moment. So, whether I go stand outside and I can hear a bird chirp, or I can hear the wind in the trees, or I can hear a water, like water if I'm by water, or if I can hear, I don't know, the grass blowing, or whatever it is, choose five things that you can actively hear. If it's the air conditioner, if you're sitting inside, if it's, the running of your refrigerator, whatever it is, five things that you have to name that you can hear. I That is such an awesome tool to bring you back in the present and to really bring you out of your mind being in like the third dimension down the road, trying to
Yeah.
create anxiety about a situation that is not true.
Mhm.
So that's another thing that I wanted to touch on here is anxiety. Stress and anxiety, that where they go hand in hand and oftentimes happen at the same time. They are two different things. And anxiety is nothing more than worrying about the future, about something that has not happened yet. Fear is something that is actively threatening to you right now. And those are really important to discern and to tell the difference about of fear and anxiety and stress. So, fear is a visceral response where your body biologically is telling you that there is a threat. Like you should be fearful of something happening right here and now. And fear is very current, it's very present, it's very active, it's very real, right? So, like, for example, if there was a guy walking behind you that looked really sketchy and maybe had a weapon behind you, right? Fear is like, okay, right now we need to be fearful, we need to protect ourselves. Anxiety, where it can feel identical, is where we are thinking about something that has not happened yet and is not promised. And it's our brain's way of trying to predict the future to make it easier for us to move through it whenever in our minds, whenever I'm using air quotes here, it does happen, right? It's not promised, but our brain is making it a guarantee and preparing us to be able to move forward with it. Um, so anxiety is not something that it's not real. And I don't say that insensitively, but
No.
if you're feeling anxious, it's because it's something that's not real that you're worrying about in the future. And I've always called that future tripping. I learned that from one of my Reiki masters a while ago. She always used to call it, I'm future tripping. Like, I don't know why, but I'm future tripping. And it's like where you're actively right here and now sitting in this chair right with me and you, Tress. I could be future tripping about something, like I'm tripping over something that's in the future that isn't even guaranteed to happen, right? Like that's anxiety. And stress and stressors are your cortisol levels. Like that's a chemical in your brain too. So there's a lot of differences that you have to be aware of, and identifying whether this is anxiety, whether this is stress, or whether this is fear can be really, really important and helpful for you to actually choose a coping mechanism, or choosing out of your tool belt what coping tool is actually going to be helpful for you in that moment. Because if it's fear and there's that guy walking behind you, like, girl, you best be pulling out a weapon. Like you best be pulling a tool belt out, a tool out of your tool belt that is much different than if you're just feeling anxiety. I don't say just in a minimizing way, but if you're feeling anxiety and you're going to need to pull a different tool belt of like an active meditation or something that's like putting you back in the present here, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I say all of that to kind of make a create lines between the three different emotions.
Mm-hmm. One of the other tools that I heard that I don't really utilize much, but I can understand how it's helpful, is if you hum. Like a
Yeah.
lot of times when your brain is like going a million miles an hour, you can it's focusing on sound, like you said, right? But it's creating your own sound to focus on.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and you can literally just like right, and you can like hum and create sound for yourself. I've heard mixed reviews on that one, because some people with ADHD say humming does not drown out their thoughts that are running away without them, and that some people say that it's really, really helpful. For me, active meditation has been the most helpful, but then that has shown me how, like, active meditation led to me physically moving slower in order to help my brain move slower. So I would really challenge you guys, if stress or anxiety is something that you are dealing with on any kind of a regular basis, please, please try these things out and see if they help you. Like,
Mm-hmm.
try out active meditation where you choose one small task and you focus on all of your senses with it. How does it sound? How does it feel? How does it look? Right? And just try to be fully in that moment. That's active meditation. You can do it when you're opening your shop, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or if you're getting ready for your day, you can focus on the way that the light switch feels underneath your fingers after you open the door, and you can hear the click and like the buzz of the lights. And as you walk across the floor, like, listen to your feet on the floor, whether like they're padding across carpet or they're clicking on hard wood. And then when you sit down and you take out your tools, feel the cool metal or the plastic or whatever it is under your fingers, and listen to the way that it sounds with every step that you take. and it really can make a difference. But if you find that your thoughts are just running a million miles a minute, take time to move and move intentionally and slowly
Mhm.
and watch your thoughts. I mean, I say watch, but like experience your thoughts slowing down as your physical movements slow down. Now, this I don't think is terribly helpful when we're doing lashes because we're typically doing like small controlled slow movements when we're doing lashes. Do you have I can't think of one at the moment. Like, do you have a tip for if you're feeling anxious when you're doing lashes? Um, what you can do. To me, I would focus on my breathing. Like I'd put on really relaxing music. So I'd put on either spa music or classical, and I wouldn't have like upbeat music or anybody talking to me or anything. Like I'd put on slow music and focus on breathing slowly. What
Hmm.
would you do, Erin?
It's interesting because lashing for a lot of people say that it's their meditative practice, and it kind of pulls them out of everything else that they have going on in life, and it almost is their meditation. And I hear that, but for me it actually is, like I said, when I sit in stillness and I'm required to sit still when I'm feeling chaos around me, it makes it worse. And so for me, when there's moments, how do I say this? There are moments where I believe that there's times to really sit with it and move through it intentionally. And then there's times that you need to employ a coping tool that gets you through that moment until you actually have a moment in a safe place to be able to work through whatever just came up for you. So for me, I lashing I is extremely meditative for me. And so when my life is in chaos and I'm forced to sit still because it's forcing me to sit internally with myself while in a silent room with a client, it almost can give me anxiety to sit in silence. So again, in those moments for me, it's kind of one of those moments that I'm going to employ something to get me through this set right now, and then after I'm no longer working with sharp tools next to somebody's eyeball, then I can work through whatever is coming up, right? So in those moments I actually do choose distraction, and that sounds different
Cool.
than
No, I think
yours.
that that's valid.
For me, I choose distraction.
Hmm.
I choose to actively get out of my own head and choose to actively not sit in silence. So whether that be if my client wants to listen to a movie or a podcast, something, or if they want to listen to music, I can just pop in my AirPods and listen to something on my own. So that way, it keeps my mind from being still in that moment. Otherwise, when I'm not in active fight or flight like that, and I'm just sitting with my client, um, it can be it can be very meditative to focus on what you're doing. And so for me, what I'll do, I think similar to what you're talking about with active meditation, is I kind of drown out. I'm kind of trying to like introspectively think about this because I think it's kind of subconscious when I do it. But what I do is I'm focusing on individual wrapping, and I'm focusing on the fibers, and I'm literally focusing on the tiniest things that are just like almost microscopic.
I
But
love
for
that. Yeah.
that sort of attention to detail is so much more distracting to my hand, and adding in the motor movements with your body
Hmm.
and physically moving in that way, to me is very it keeps me present. So I am mapping more,
Like
what
you
do I
get
want to
like incredibly intentional with every
yes.
single thing you do.
I'm so attentive to every
Hmm.
movement, to the way that the fibers are moving. And I do work slower. However, I've always said, and one of the things that I say in my Secrets to Retention course, and I've been saying it for forever, one of like my key taglines in lashing is that the slower you work, the faster you work. So it's funny that a lot of people would probably interpret what we're explaining right now as like, oh, when you're moving slower, well, I'm gonna all my sets, like I only have, an hour before my next client comes in, I'm booked back to back, right? But for me, when I actually step into that space mentally, I am physically working slower. However, I am making up just as much time and I am not
Yeah.
making mistakes. I'm not having lashes pop off. I am making sure that those lashes are going to last. And so those are some of my best sets
I
that
agree.
I do and some of the best fills, right? So I also think it's worth mentioning your clients coming in and being aware of your clients' energy coming in. Because if you're feeling a little bit heightened emotionally, or maybe you're feeling a little bit stressed that day or a little bit more on edge, and then like you're already kind of struggling to maintain your center, and then you have a client come in that is just like, she comes in to unload on you and she's just a
Mhm.
stress ball that day,
Coming in
right?
hot.
Coming in hot. We're so here to support our clients, but I think it's really important to just call attention to mentally, I'm saying to you and me right now having this
Mhm.
conversation, to call attention to being aware of that sort of energy coming in can almost amp you up even harder
Mhm.
and even more, and can make your days even harder to get through for your next upcoming clients. And your next client coming in after that could get a residual effect or a residual energy from your last client. And so your clients definitely feel your stress and your anxiety and your energy. So it's really important for us to kind of be a conductor of a safe space for our clients so that, it doesn't have a domino effect of anxiety all day, every day. Like, have you ever had
Mhm.
that? Like, had a client come in first thing in the morning and she's just so stressed. And so it amps you up for the rest of the day. Have you ever had
I
that?
think what I've always done, because like I've worked in beauty since I was like 16, right? So, like when I was 16 and 17, I was learning how to calm people down from behind a desk that were yelling at me about the haircut they
Yeah.
got 3 days ago and hate, right? So, for me, when somebody would come in really amped up, my first my first response is to ground myself and ground them. So my first response is like literally I have held clients by the shoulders gently and said, "Take a deep breath with me." And I've literally made them like,
Hmm.
and I would go, "Okay, it's going to be okay. You're in a safe space." So instead of being like, "Girl, what is going on? Tell me everything he did. Like,
Right.
why are you so pissed?" I would take it and I would just flip it on. Like they didn't ask me to, but I would just flip it on its head and I would be like, "We're going to ground the shit out of this
Yeah.
moment," because I couldn't deal well with the heightened stress and anxiety that they were bringing in with them.
Right.
So it's not something like I never felt like, "Ooh, I'm going to take control of the situation." I was just like, "I have to help me, help them, help me."
Yeah.
So I can do a good job here. And it was literally always just done with so much care that I'm sure it's happy. Yes, you know what? I can actually think of it. I had a couple clients in California that were like real stressy. And I would just like grit my teeth and get through it. Um, but in Minnesota, like my clients were a little bit on a different level. Like Minnesota's a lot different than LA. And uh, on average, clients in Minnesota were like a little bit more timid and a lot more easily influenced. I hate to say it, but it's true. Just cultural differences. And so yeah, I would encourage you if you have a client that comes in really revved up, help to ground them. And then I wouldn't feed into it. I wouldn't be like,
Yeah.
tell me all of your woes. I would be like, let's get through this together and like let's be quiet and let's calm
Yeah.
down and let's like, you know.
One of my favorite questions whenever I've had a client come in and they're just um they're struggling, they're having a really hard day for one reason or another. One of my favorite questions to ask them is I always say, "What's a good thing that's happened to you over the last
Yeah.
week?"
Yep.
And I intentionally kind of form the questions and formulate a conversation with them that is positive, because instead of me trying to like force them into a positive mindset, we can't fucking do that, guys. Like, we don't have
Nope.
the control to do that. Like, I want to respect where they're at and I want to honor where they're at in their day right now, but I want my appointment, at least for the next hour, 2 hours that I have with them, to be medicine for them that's actually going to set them up for the rest of the day to maybe have some relief for just a minute, right? So I've always looked at it similar to how you have, of like, I don't want to add to the stress. I don't want them to leave their appointment A, worse than when they came in and more stressed out, but B, I don't want them to even feel the same as when they came in. Like, this is supposed to be a relaxing appointment. So I will formulate conversation, and it's also a way for me to protect my energy and protect myself too, for not adding to the chaos of whatever's happening in my head that day, because it certainly is contagious. Positivity is contagious, as is negativity. So I really
Yep.
want to be hyper aware of it in my studio on days that I know that I'm kind of struggling, so that my clients, A, have a clean space to walk into that's safe for them, but B, that I can kind of also help other people while honoring where they're at. So I really like also what you said with humming, because that's what I've always done, either with ohms, with humming, or with like a consistent frequency in your breath. So you just take a really big deep breath in and just like the same frequency over and over and over again for as long as you can, for breath after breath after breath after breath after breath. And it actually is scientific, and the reason that ohms are really helpful is because it soothes the vagus nerve, which then
Mm-hmm.
calms the central nervous system. So scientifically, humming actually, like when you're tuning into your throat chakra, your breath, I know that that's a little woo woo, but when you're tuning into your voice, it's very helpful to feel the vibration in your body, because it physically creates a vibration in your body that then vibrates and soothes your central nervous system. So it does create a presence in your body, but it also can centralize and center your nervous system too when you're feeling kind of chaotic and wild in your brain.
There's actually necklaces out there that you can purchase that basically are like a mini vibrator that sit right on top of your
Mhm.
breastbone,
Mhm.
and they're to calm that nerve. Um, and so humming basically does the same thing. And I just think it's really interesting that there's like actual physical tools out there. They don't look like, you know, what you would think. But yeah, they do that. So you can physically do that for yourself without buying it, but you could buy it too if you like. I have a hard time humming consistently. I feel like I'm going to pass out. Like I
Mhm.
feel like I can't breathe. Um, but there was one thing that you said that I wanted to come back to, and I'm forgetting it right now, and that's okay. That's okay.
It'll come back to you.
Mhm.
Yeah, so also I want to throw out here too, when we're talking about tools for stress and for anxiety, um, if you are at a point that you are needing to rely on medication, please do it.
Yep.
Pharmaceuticals and medication has always been a part of my life
They've
because,
saved
like
my
I
life
said,
before.
absolutely, it has me too, multiple times, and I just wanna put it out there that there's no shame in medication, there's no shame in pharmaceuticals and seeking, medical help if you're struggling with stress. Lovingly, it is not normal to have anxiety attacks every day or to constantly be having anxiety attacks. It is not stress is the killer in our world right now. It is the main cause to, like what you were saying earlier, inflammation. And
Mhm.
inflammation is one of the biggest reasons for illness in our
Mhm.
bodies. So the higher our stress levels are, it is causing so much damage and like literally physically taking years off of our life. And it is not good for us to be having constant anxiety attacks, for us to constantly be worrying, for our brains to not be able to shut off, for our stress levels to be at a point that it is unmanageable for us every day. um, I I certainly would never push a medication on anybody or even recommend it, but if you are at that place, it could be worth a conversation with a doctor or a naturopath or whoever you find medication in. So,
I've started taking mushroom supplements.
oh, I love it. Is it lion's mane?
That and like a couple other ones. I'm not like well versed in them right now. But I've started to, and it's not because I'm living in a constant state of anxiety, it's because I used to, and so I'm doing all of the things that I can to
Yeah.
make sure that like I'm just caring for myself well. But it's really interesting because you can go back several years. Like I was the same weight, give or take 5 pounds, for probably the last 15 years on average. But if you look at pictures of me in like the first half of that 15 years and then like the last couple of years, my body and my face and everything about me changed so much as my inflammation went down. And I think it's really interesting. Like I can look back at pictures and it's not just like baby fat or like weight that I had on because I was younger, like in my face and stuff. Like literally you can look at pictures of me and be like, oh, she was not well. And it's really
Yeah.
interesting how I can look back and see like the physical manifestation of that inflammation that I carried with me every single day.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely think that mushroom blends can be really, really positive. Fungi in general, I mean, obviously more and more it's coming up in our society as I don't want to
Mhm.
call it trending. I think it's just more like people are finding medicine in it.
Yeah.
Medicine in it. That was so weird to say. Which is beautiful and wonderful. Like I think that natural medicine is always the first route that I would always prefer to take. That being said, like I have always mixed pharmaceuticals and natural herbs and blends to
Mhm.
like apothecary stuff to be able to um, combat my actual like clinical diagnosis in my brain. So when you
Mhm.
have a chemical imbalance in your mind, you could need medication for that. That's
Yeah,
or some sort of
absolutely.
supplement. Natural earth medicine can certainly help with that too. For me, it wasn't strong enough. For me, I
Yeah.
absolutely needed a pharmaceutical for that. So that being said, I mix the two, and I've always relied on both of those as heavy tools in my life. And so I was on an SSRI. I've pretty much I've gone through every one of the brands, worked my way up through them for years and years. Again, since I was a teenager, I ended up getting off of SSRIs because of the way that it was affecting my body, and then I ended up transitioning to SNRIs, which is a different type of. It's working in a different receptor in your brain. And now I'm prescribed an anti-adrenaline medication. So that is significantly helpful and directly impacting for anxiety and for anxiety attacks. So I would talk
Mhm.
to a doctor um, about that if that's something that you are needing support with. I also have these herbal blends, and we talked about them on another podcast, but it's from Wish Garden Herbs, and there's one that's
Mhm.
called Deep Stress. That one is j- just as strong and works just as well as any pharmaceutical that I've ever taken. And I'm, like I said, very well versed in those types of medications. And it is just as strong, and it is all natural. It's nothing but herbs inside of it. And you
It
can't,
tastes like funny cinnamon.
yeah, that one's funny, but it seriously works so quickly. It's just a tincture, and it's really helpful. So Wish Garden Herbs is the site, and it's called Deep Stress. You
I've
can also
used that one too circumstantially, and that's been incredibly helpful.
super helpful. So if you're more of a natural girly or don't, either have health insurance or whatever your case may be,
Mhm.
then that could be a really awesome option for you. You can also I'm pretty sure you can get that one on Amazon.
You can.
Um,
I did.
eh, okay, cool. Yeah, I can never. Some of them are on Amazon and some of
Mhm.
them aren't. So I'm never sure, but yeah, and it's like $20. I think maybe even
Yeah.
less. I think it's $10 for the smaller one if you just want to try it.
I
So
bought the big
highly,
one.
highly, highly recommend. I literally have two of them sitting right next to right
Mhm.
next to me right now. Yeah, so then you can also get sleep ones. So that's another aspect here too when we're talking about employing tools and um, everything for stress. If you're feeling really stressed, sleep is so important for you to be able to prioritize and really get good night's rest in like deep REM sleep. And for me, when my anxiety is really high and my stress levels are really high and I have something that I have going on, I don't sleep well. Like I'm
There's
I'm dreaming of the situation that I'm currently dealing
Yeah,
with.
and there's nothing to be proud of for being able to function on lack of sleep. Like there have been so many scientific studies done about how you like do not function mentally, physically, emotionally without proper sleep after like a day or two. You're working at a deficit and you're
Mhm.
like literally sabotaging yourself. If like don't
Yeah.
Lack of sleep is not something to be proud
That
of.
that and as lash artists, I see a lot of posts, and this is not me calling anybody out, but I'm just calling attention to it here. It is not something to be proud of or to boast about that you're living on caffeine all day and you aren't eating a meal during your work days and you're just having, three venti Starbucks cups of
Mhm.
coffee all day, every day. Lack of sleep and too high doses of caffeine is not a way of supporting your nervous system, your adrenal, anything.
Mhm.
Adrenal fatigue for me, I burn out so hard when I am not sleeping well and I'm having copious amounts of caffeine. Believe me, I have been there. Again, I'm not shaming anybody for that. I've been there
Oh,
many
same.
times
I've
in my
been there.
life.
Mhm.
Absolutely. Sometimes we gotta do what we gotta do. I understand that. But
Just not long term.
it's not something that you should be making it a goal every day. And if you are at a point that you are relying solely on caffeine to get you through your work days every day with your clients, it's time to readjust, our work schedule or how much we're working, raise our prices, cut our clientele a little bit, hire an employee to take half of your clientele, whatever it may be, to free up some of that time, because it's not sustainable for you to do that with your body and your brain. So, with when it comes to sleep, Busch Garden Herbs also has one. I think it's called Sleep, Deep Sleep. It's something like that. It's literally the only one that says sleep on it. So if you just look up Busch Garden Herbs Sleep, it's going to be the first one that comes up. And I'm totally blanking the name off the top of my head, but that knocks me out like better than any NyQuil or muscle relaxer, like
Wow.
any sort of actual like sleep aid, melatonin, any of that. And it's just herbs. So really prioritize sleep. And I've always been told that oversleeping whenever you're, feeling anxious or depressed is actually really bad for you. But for me, I lean into it because I'm listening to my body. And for me, that has always been something that I do, is when I can feel myself starting to either have adrenal fatigue or I'm starting to set into depressive episodes or anxiety or too high of stress responses, sleep, I will easily sleep 12 hours a night. Like,
I think sleep is wonderful too. I don't if I spend years not getting out of bed on time, that's a problem. I've been there before. I was depressed and I needed medication and I needed help, right? But like when I'm sorry I interrupted, but I very very adamantly agree with you. Like when I'm burnt out, when I've been going too hard, when I've had too much stress and my body is just done, like I will spend full days, like
mm,
I'll get out of bed and feed myself and lay on the couch all day and nap off and on all day long. Like I have no shame about sleeping for 11 hours straight and then like taking a nap that day if my body
yeah.
needs to recover.
Yeah. And, it's so funny because during those times, sleep is probably the only thing that like is refreshing to me. Like I can, and it takes a while to catch up of like
Mhm.
consistent, 10-hour nights of sleeping. But after probably about a week, 2 weeks of 10-hour night sleeps, finally I start to feel a little bit more refreshed and rejuvenated. And I'm like, okay, that's exactly what my body needed. And so there's certain things that I would encourage you to, find discernment in and be a critical thinker about, because just because it's on Google, just because it's on the internet in some way, some fashion, someone gave you the advice one day, it's not for everybody. And if your body is calling you to a certain medication, it knows what it needs. So listen
Mhm.
to that, and also listen to it when it's calling for help, because that is
Yeah.
when you get into some dangerous waters, is when your body for a long time has been calling for help for you and screaming on a deep level in your inside somewhere, and you're just not listening and you're ignoring it because of money or because of work or because of clients or because of
Mhm.
XYZ. You're trying to reach a goal, you can reach a certain point of burnout that it gets to be extremely dangerous. I've been there many times in my life where I just ignore my warning signs and what my body's
Mhm.
trying to warn me about. And then we get to a point that, it is a hard place to come back from. Um,
For
so
anybody who's afraid of that stigma though, who's like I like after I got off of very very strong anti anxiety and depression medication that I was on for like 8 years straight, I never wanted to get back on a medication again. Like I fought against it, but I got on a medication that's like an ADHD. It's also used for depression. And so like my brain like fought so hard, like I don't need to be on depression medication. But I also know that it is prescribed for ADHD and it's helpful and it's non-stimulant because I tried the stimulant route and my life fell apart.
yeah.
Um, but for anybody who's concerned about the stigma, like just in a very vulnerable moment, I literally was hospitalized for having a nervous breakdown when I was 23 years old. I had a baby I had a husband who was unemployed. I was working a full-time job and a part-time job. And I thought, because I saw so many other people just like chin up and get through it, that that's what I was going to do too. And eventually, like my mind and my body just gave out on me, and I know I got to the point where I like no longer could function.
Yeah.
And it's okay, like spending that time that I did, like healing and recovering and learning, and like literally I was in the hospital for a week. I checked myself in. um I think it's really important. I wish more people were open with the struggles that they've had, be it mentally or emotionally or physically. And so if you feel like there's any kind of stigma, just know that it takes a certain amount of strength to be able to stand up and say, hey, I need help. And you're strong enough to be able to do that.
Mm-hmm.
But if you don't stand up and say, hey, I need help, whether it's financial or whatever, like I couldn't afford to be in the hospital for a week, but it saved my life. It's what I needed, right? If you're not strong enough, like eventually your body or your brain will take you out. And it's not worth waiting until that point, like I did.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And in our industry, it's almost celebrated. And I hate that so much that in our industry, it's almost celebrated to work harder, to gain more clients, to make more money, to have more clients per day,
Be
to
on
work
Instagram all
faster,
the
to
time.
the Instagram. Like the
Mhm.
faster pace in our industry, unfortunately, is being encouraged and celebrated. And I will be the first one to say that I fell into that, and I have fallen into that
Same.
for years and years and years. And now I'm pushing a decade in this industry, and I have hit a wall. I hit a wall last year in August that I just absolutely fucking plummeted. And I'm so thankful for my community and the community for Monarch Lash Co. that continues to check in on me. But like people noticed, and
Mhm.
there is that saying, if you don't choose breaks, then your breaks are going to be chosen for you, and that is so true.
It
It is
is.
so true. And so I feel that, but please, 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 like I'm begging you, do not make the same mistakes that I did. Don't ignore warning signs in your body. Don't push yourself to a point. Like no amount of money is going to make you feel okay when you do hit that wall. No
Mhm.
amount of no how big no matter how big your house is, no matter what nice of car you have, right? Like if you hit a wall mentally that you just absolutely are not okay anymore, none of that is going to matter. I promise you. I thought that it would, and it won't. It doesn't pull you out of it.
Mhm.
So really focus on your mental health, and prioritizing a pace that is actually sustainable for you and your business long term, because otherwise you can only go so fast for so long before you end up running out of steam.
It's true. I think it's interesting that the stress episode is the longest episode I think we've ever recorded. But I want to give you a couple wrap up points. Remember to consider using the tools that we talked about in this episode. Remember, if you need help, reach out and ask for it. Even if you don't know where to ask your doctor, ask me or Erin, ask somebody that you know that's been there. And anybody who has been in the position that you're finding yourself in will have compassion and will have love for you and will completely understand and will not be judging you for reaching out and asking for help.
Mhm.
It's just so important to prioritize your mental health and your physical health, because we so glorify on social media platforms, we so glorify being able to do it all, and it's just not possible. Like
Yeah.
it's a sham. Maybe there's like a quote unquote all that you can and want to do. Like in my life right now, I'm trying to do it all, but I also know that there is a lot of things that I've chosen to leave by the side because I can't actually do it all. Does that make
Yeah.
sense? Like
Yeah.
you have to choose the things that are the most important to you and run with those, and hopefully that's like your mental and physical health. So I guess just huge PSA, if you need help, reach out and get it.
It's so interesting to me anytime that I've posted about mental health on social media, on my story or anything, the amount of messages that I get privately of people saying that they're in the same boat, they're
Yeah.
experiencing this too. Thank you so much for talking about this. I thought that I was alone. Like the more awareness that we have around it, the less the less stigmatized it will be. And everybody, I can promise you, promise you, like with every ounce of my soul, I can promise you that you are not alone in experiencing what you are experiencing. And I know that I'm not alone in experiencing what I'm experiencing. I know that you're not alone, Tress, in experiencing what you've experienced. And the more that you reach out and the more you ask questions, the more support that you seek, the more you're going to find. And I promise you that in this industry, in the lash industry, people are fucking nice. Okay. People are so supportive. People are so willing to have those conversations with you. They are so willing to support you. They are so willing to offer help. They are so willing to give you anything that you are needing to support you through that. And honestly, opening up and allowing yourself to be vulnerable, could really help somebody else, find comfort in knowing that they aren't alone. But also you could find some really lifelong friendships in being vulnerable and allowing yourself to work through that with somebody. And this industry is perfect for that. And I've found nothing but support every time that I've reached out in this industry. That being said, Tress and I during this episode have been a little bit incognito about, medications and certain things that we're talking about here. So if you are needing more specifics, I know for myself, I can't, necessarily volunteer Tress, but I am pretty confident that she's open about it.
I'm an open book.
Open book. If you are needing more specifics, or you guys are curious about medications, or if you are seeking help with your doctor and medical advice, please DM us if you have any questions about this. We are very happy to share what medications that we've taken, what medications we're on, and any, medicinal support that we have found to help us. So if you guys are needing any support, stress-wise, anxiety-wise, pharmaceutical-wise, or if you're curious about our experience with them, feel free to reach out privately, and we are happy to talk with you about them.
And not prescribe anything, but just tell you our own experience.
Oh God, no, of course not.
You know me, I'm always looking for how something could be taken wrong.
Yeah, obviously we're not doctors. This is why we're being incognito about it, because we want to be really. It's not really for everybody, and not every pharmaceutical is best for everybody. So, seeking medical attention obviously is the route to take, and your doctor can give you a much more, unique cocktail to what your specifics are. But we are an open book, and we are here to support you in any way that you need. So if you guys need help, please reach out. And we love you guys so much. This was kind of a heavy episode.
Yeah, but I feel so much better having.
Yeah, it was like a little mini therapy sesh.
Hopefully you guys feel better too.
Yeah.
Thanks for being with us. We'll see you next time.
We'll see you on the next episode.
You.
Love you.
Bye-bye.